Good evening, everyone. This is a special meeting of the Cupertino City Council. Today is July 7th, 2022. Although this is a special meeting, this is meant to take place, the place of our regular meeting, which was scheduled for July 5th, 2022. But of course, that's the day after the July 4th holiday. And so we saw fit to move this meeting essentially back a couple of days. So welcome, everyone. And we will go ahead and pledge allegiance to our nation's flag at this time. Please join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you very much. Madam City Clerk, if you could please conduct the roll call.
Councilmember Moore?
Here.
Councilmember Way?
Here.
Councilmember Willie?
Here.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Here.
Mayor Paul?
Here. Thank you very much, Madam City Clerk. Our next order of business is ceremonial matters and presentations, of which there are none in this special meeting today. I'll ask my fellow colleagues first, are there any postponements or orders of the day requested with regard to tonight's agenda? I don't see any from my left or right. Let me check the Zoom function. Councilmember Way and Councilmember Willie are over Zoom today. Neither of them have their hand raised. And just by way of explanation to the public, we are going ahead and staggering the seating. We do want to be very responsive to the members of the public that would like the option of seeing us live, but at the same time, we're being as safe as we can and asking, especially in these times when the orders are allowing of it, a couple of our council members to take this meeting by video. So you'll see Councilmember Woolley and Councilmember Way by video over Zoom this evening as well. So at this time, let me ask our city clerk, are there any postponements and orders of the day from requests by staff or the public?
No postponements, Mayor. Okay,
well, thank you very much, Madam City Clerk. Let's go on to oral communications. This portion of the meeting is for people interested in speaking on any item that is not on our agenda. And so going over some of the brief parameters of oral communications as well as public comment on our regular items. Please have your hand raised by the time the first speaker is done speaking in Zoom, and you will have your name called on for oral communications, and that also goes for items on the agenda where the public is invited to speak at the beginning of the agenda item. And then we also have the ability to take blue cards live, and so if you have your blue cards in by the time the first person on Zoom has spoken, we'll go ahead and read that blue card and call on you live. There's also the ability to email in your comments while that first person on Zoom is speaking, and please email your comment in to cityclerk, all one word, at cupertino.org, and up to 3 minutes of that comment will be read into the record by the city clerk if you do so at that time. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the Zoom function. I do see one member of the public with a hand raised. That is Jennifer. And so welcome, Jennifer. Please begin. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. It's nice to see you all. I hope you're having a nice summer. I do think it's nice to be able to either be there or have Zoom available. I just wanted to bring up something. I sent an email to all of you. There have been a lot of things that have been happening politically in our state and in our country, but I'm very, very concerned about an item that is affecting California all over the state, which is attempts to override local zoning control. And it is something that is affecting every city in California as we go through the housing element, which is not directly responsible for it. But I'm also very, very concerned about the future impacts of SB 9 and SB 10 and this type of laws that have been passed recently that are attempting to override local control. This is happening currently in Oregon, and also there are attempts to try to do this in Washington State, most recently in Spokane. I personally would not like to see rules like SB 9 and SB 10 go to Washington, D.C. I really don't like this type of policy to be deployed across our country if those types of laws make it to Washington, D.C. I like our current president. I think he's doing a very good job under difficult circumstances. But I am very, very concerned that anyone coming that might wind up at the White House from states that are having issues with loss of local control, such as is being presented by bills like SB 9 and SB 10 and the inflated RENA numbers, I'll throw that in there. I would be very concerned that this policy would it be immediately deployed at the Washington, D.C. level into all 50 states and 51, et cetera. If we are having trouble in this state dealing with, I'm going to pick on SB 9 and SB 10 because they are the most poster child of this type of erosion of local control. I don't want to see this deployed in Washington, D.C. immediately if we have someone elected from Oregon, Washington, or California. I would be very, very concerned about this. We have no voice in California now to try to be able to say that these laws are wrong, except if we are able to have
15 seconds.
Rules next year coming in, but I do not want these deployed across our country. They are elements of fascist. We will just name it what it is. I'm hoping we can put these to bed in California, but I do not want this to happen in our
Jennifer.
country. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Your time has lapsed, and the remaining hand that is raised within the time of the first speaker is from Rhoda Fry. And so, Rhoda, welcome, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. As usual, I haven't had time to completely put my ideas together. However, you received a letter this evening, and this is why I'm jumping on today, complaining about Planning Commissioner Wong's concerns at a Planning Commission meeting. And I watched the videos, and I am so grateful that we have Planning Commissioner Wong on our Planning Commission. He was absolutely spot on. We should be irate by how long our housing element has taken with our paid consultants. We're getting to the point where, do we need to call on volunteers of the community to help with this housing element that we are paying consultants to do? And his concerns are legitimate. And I just want to say how grateful I am that we have commissioners who care so deeply about our city and express their opinions. We really do deserve better of our tax dollars. We've got to get this housing, do what we can to meet RENA and do it timely. This is just not okay. To Ms. Griffin's comment, please do what you can to retain local control. Our community development department is devolving into a mandated community destruction department. We are losing our previously protected neighborhood retail corners. And by doing so, that means that we're losing walkability, quality of life, and really desire to live in Cupertino anymore. Please, we got to do better. Now, with respect to our tax dollars, and I'm going to be talking about this at a future council meeting. Our income from our tax dollars to our city is at risk. I know that the council well knows about this, but the community doesn't necessarily understand how we get money, quite a bit of money, from sales tax that comes into Apple. And basically, when a person buys something online anywhere in California, City of Cupertino gets 65 cents out of every $100 spent, and Apple gets 35 cents. That income is at risk. And being a fairly wealthy city can mask an awful lot of wasteful spending. And to that, one of them was this I Love Cupertino website that I'm sure was a well-meaning idea that was approved by a staff member who's no longer with the city. But seriously, we spent $65,000 on a website called I Love Cupertino. The trademark was obtained by Mr. J.R. Fruin, who is a candidate for city council. And that website it's shameful. If I had hired a high school intern to do that website, they would not be getting a recommendation from me, ever. We've got to put wasteful spending to an end and protect our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhoda. We are through our hands raised on the Zoom function, and so let me refer this to our city clerk. Madam City Clerk, are there any blue cards for speaking on this item?
No, Mayor, there are no blue cards.
And were there any emails that came in during the time allocated for those emails to come in?
No, Mayor, no emails.
Okay, very well. Let's go on to the next portion of our agenda. These are reports by council and staff. Item number 2 is a set of brief reports on council member activities and brief announcements. And so I'll go ahead and refer this to council, and just to remind everyone of the guideline, just a minute or so since our prior council meeting on June 21st of any activities that you'd like to report out on. And so let me go again to our Zoom function. I don't see Councilmember Way or Councilmember Willie with a hand raised. Now I see Councilmember Way. And so why don't you go first with item number 2?
Thank you, Mayor Paul. Very briefly, I attended the June 30th Cal City's summer recess briefing on primary bills, and there were a lot of really good bills that they're supporting, environmental bills and local control bills. But one thing I want to report is on the CARE Courts initiative by the governor. CARE Courts means Community Assistance, Recovery, and Empowerment. And it is a good bill, but Cal City is being cautious to support it with amendments. It does need some more cleanup and more amendments. So I think we will be listening to more of the CARE Courts initiative that's coming up from Sacramento. And the 4th of July, I think I'm going to be brief. Everybody's there. We had a pancake breakfast, and we had flag raising, and we led all 5 of us, 5 council members, led the children's parade and the band. So the concert, I think we had a great time with our residents. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Councilmember Way. Councilmember Willie.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so on the 25th of June, several of us, yourself included, attended the Cupertino Amateur Radio Emergency Services CARES event at Memorial Park. It was actually really good to interact with a number of our residents that are, a part of this emergency response. In the case of a major event, which, could be a earthquake or something, they're in the neighborhoods connected with the block leader program, so to speak, and being sure that everybody gets accounted for and gets help that they need. Also want to just mention something that we just received today, notice of. You, Mayor, have made some great statements about it, that Cupertino is awarded $8 million to go toward our VIA shuttle program, over $8 million. Absolutely amazing. I think we need to really do a shout out for staff, because this is a grant that they were able to secure. To just touch on a couple of the items, it's going to provide wider service area, including getting to Santa Clara. It'll expand the options and get us some zero emission vehicle. And so, wow, this is really going to help get us down the road. Thank you, Mayor, for your press release. And I'll leave it at that.
We'll thank staff for that, but I'll elaborate briefly on that when it comes to my turn. So let's go to Councilmember Moore. Did you have any updates from since June 21st?
Sure, I'll just add a little bit on. I was also at the CARES event, and I'm hoping that we perhaps will have a study session or an informational item to give us an update on our emergency operations and hear more about the behind-the-scenes programs that we have going on. I think it'd be really important. While I was there, we connected, or I should say our CARES team connected with West Virginia, Vermont, and Western New York, which was pretty exciting. And I'm really happy that we had our 4th of July events back. And it was really, I think the residents really enjoyed, and the visitors that came from out of the city really enjoyed the music that we had at Memorial Park, and we were all in costume, it was great fun. And the fireworks at the end of the day were spectacular. I overheard someone say that this was the best thing they'd ever seen. It was really, the finale was pretty phenomenal. So glad to see it back.
Thank you, Councilmember Moore. And next we have Vice Mayor Chow.
Hello. On the 23rd, I attended the weekly summer concert at Memorial Park. It was well attended and great fun. I encourage everyone to attend, and there were people dancing in front of the audience, and I was able to chat with some residents. On the 24th, I met with Cupertino High FBLA students who are doing the enterprise program. They cooperate with our small businesses each year to help, could be creating website, doing social media, or helping them collect input for like mental health apps. So it was a great program that students is doing with small business. On the 25th, I also attended the amateur radio field day, and with $35 now you can purchase one mobile radio that you can talk to people over the world. And on the 29th, I met with Project Sentinel. They are rolling out a program called the Silver Nest that would allow people to do home share program. And then I hope that when they finalize that program, they can present it to the City Council. And on the 1st, I attended the welcome ceremony for Supreme Court Justice of India, which the mayor invited us to, and it was hosted by Indo-American Association in Milpitas. And on the 4th of July was just amazing. We did the flag raising and children's parade and danced at the concert. It's great to see that so many people are coming back to normal. Yeah, and then, by the way, so the weekly concert is ongoing until end of July. Then the Shakespeare in the Park will be back, and then we will also have movies in the park at Creekside.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Vice Mayor. I'll go ahead and report out on a couple of items. First, an elaboration on what Councilmember Willie mentioned with regard to the $8 million grant from the state to help support our VIA shuttle program. That is actually a significant expansion of the program. Cupertino has put in more than $1 million for the last 18 months. I believe it was $1.5 million at the initial allocation, and we might have added a bit more. But of course, $8 million, there is such an expansion contemplated there. So it's a great opportunity. I do want to thank our partners in Santa Clara, specifically in the city of Santa Clara. I reached out to Councilmember Raj Chahal as well as Mayor Lisa Gilmore, and I think it was just such a great example of working, throughout the spectrum of politics, be they local or in any other kind of consideration, to deliver something that will be a very positive effect to our region generally. I also want to thank Chris Correo for his efforts in making sure that we got this information out there. Chris encouraged me to see if I could try to reach out to counterparts in Santa Clara. And so I think that was a very successful effort. I'm extremely pleased with the fact that we have that work plan aligned. We are now in the 7th day of our fiscal year, and I just see all sorts of wonderful things that are happening throughout the city. And so I know that people have some sense of uncertainty, but at the same time, I am very pleased to report that Council's been working incredibly hard, and I think that in the upcoming weeks, we'll just have a lot of common clarity and very optimistic outlooks throughout the throughout the city, be it the people that are here and enjoying a lot of the services, as well as the people that work for the city of Cupertino. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. I did have a Eagle Scout ceremony that I attended in Quinlan Center on one of the Saturdays since our last meeting. It was an excellent ceremony, and there were, I believe, 6 new Eagle Scouts that were elevated that day during the ceremony. So without any further delay on this, I'll go on to item number 3. These are also under reports by council and staff. These are our reports on committee assignments. And by way of very brief explanation, our committee assignments are the ones that are, in general, assigned out and approved in December at the end of the calendar year for the upcoming year. And I'm going to go ahead and go back to our Zoom function to ask either Councilmember Woolley or Councilmember Way if they would like to report out on their activities for the assigned committees since the last council meeting on June 21st. So I see a hand raised by Councilmember Woolley. And so Councilmember Woolley, why don't you start us off on this one?
I'll mention what I consider to be a pretty noteworthy item for Silicon Valley Clean Energy. We're, especially with the high prices of gases, this might be what helps usher in electric vehicles. But at any rate, Silicon Valley Clean Energy is now providing grants of $45,000 for multifamily units, so for the renters, to install charging stations. If I can put a little bit of a backdrop behind this, an individual that has a house, wants to buy an electric vehicle, he would buy the charging unit and put it in his house, and it adds to the value of his house, and he gets the benefit. Unfortunately, renters don't have that luxury. They're at the mercy of whoever the property owner is. If it happened to be a single-family home, once again, the owner's value would be going up by the amount of the investment, roughly. But for multifamily, you've got a landlord that would have to shell out of his own pocket to provide these charging stations so that his renters could then benefit from buying or even be able to buy a electric vehicle. And so the $45,000 will just about cover the cost. It's a grant, and that would then allow them to take advantage of that. But if I put it in perspective, because, we may not connect the dots, if you were charging at home, whether it's a rented unit or in your house, typically the cost is going to be about 13 cents per kilowatt hour. But if you happen to be a renter with no place to charge and you have to go to a public charging station, that same amount of electricity, a kilowatt hour, would be between 30 cents and 60 cents, 3 to 4 to 5 times. And you would constantly be doing it, and you would constantly be inconvenienced by going someplace else. So getting the word out is, to me, getting that word out is going to really help to make this come to life for all those people in our community that are renters and would like to move to the electric vehicle. So for now, I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mayor. Back to you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Councilmember Woolley. Let's go next to Councilmember. Councilmember Woolley, you don't have your hand raised, and so I'm going to go to the dais. Either Councilmember Moore. Did you want to report out before we go to Vice Mayor? Councilmember Moore.
Sure. All right. Thank you, Mayor Paul. So first, I am on the Legislative Review Committee. If you want to know what our positions have been, please visit the Legislative Review Committee webpage. One thing that was pretty exciting last week, on June 30th, the governor signed SB 54 into law. This is a plastics initiative that puts California as a leader in the country. It requires all packaging in the state to be recyclable or compostable by 2032. And we had supported the plastics initiative, which was on the ballot for November. That ballot measure has been removed at this point due to SB 54, and I think that there was a lot of pressure to make SB 54 something that the governor could sign this year due to the pressure from that plastics initiative. And I want to thank Recology for putting forth about a little over $4 million to get that initiative on the ballot, and I think it had a great impact. SB 1338 regarding the care courts, we did look at it and recommended that it come to City Council to decide on whether to support or oppose or amend that particular bill. With regards to the Audit Committee, as I think everyone knows, the inflation rate's gone up. We were looking at a number about 8.6% inflation. We have had an internal audit ongoing. If you're interested in the documents on that, please visit the Cupertino budget page and take a look there. And we are working on the internal audit program, and we've been now looking at the monthly treasurer's reports and the monthly investment reports. The internal audit program, some of the items which we're looking at for the next year include policy review and ongoing support, budget process review, enterprise leadership effectiveness study, the library construction review, and a carryover project is the fraud, waste, and abuse program. So we met on the 27th and then had a follow-on meeting on Friday, July 1st. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councilmember Moore. Vice Mayor Chow, reports on committee assignments.
Also on the 27th legislative review, I'd like to add that we discussed the annual meetings with legislators. Things this year might still be in person, likely to happen in November after the legislative season. And then we have requested to have a summary of positions taken so we can have a review on which areas we are putting more emphasis, and maybe the council can review that for next year. And then also in the next meeting on the July 18th, we are going to talk about the grant request process for legislators. So besides the very happy $8 million, we also, this year's budget, we also got $5 million from our request for Assembly Evan Low for the McClellan Road Bridge, because that bridge is 120 years old. And then we also got $1 million for the all-inclusive playground. So we want to understand going forward what this process is like. So I think we have talked about, so we can talk about what grant to request next year, maybe affordable housing. So yes, that's July 18th meeting. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Vice Mayor. I'll go ahead and report out on two connections I have for committee assignments. I'm the designee from the City of Cupertino to our County Cities Association. I also sit on their Legislative Action Committee, and so they considered 4 pieces of legislation. One piece of legislation that I do want to draw our attention to has to do with the theft of catalytic converters. I know that that's something that is prevalent and of concern to a great many people throughout the community and throughout the region. And so the Cities Association went ahead and voted to support. I checked on our LRC website for the excellent work and the, frankly, time-consuming and very thought-intensive and thoughtful work that our LRC, comprised of the Vice Mayor as well as Councilmember Moore, has done over the years. And I saw that this particular legislation, or proposed legislation, I should say, had not been considered by the City of Cupertino. And typically what I try to do is reflect the positions that we take in LRC at the Cities Association. But in this case, I thought that it was a fairly safe bet to say that trying to limit the ability of stolen catalytic converters to be turned over, so to speak, which is essentially what the purpose of this legislation is in keeping with the priorities of our community. So we went ahead as a Cities Association and supported that legislation. I would make a referral to the LRC for that for their future meeting. And then The other comment that I want to make, I do sit on the audit committee with Councilmember Moore. I do want to point out how incredibly effective that interchange between the city council representatives, members of the public, and staff has been in terms of delivering the services of the audit committee, particularly in my time around again on the committee this year. I think we've just done a tremendous job in aligning the priorities. Councilmember Moore, as chair, has made sure that we are following state law with regard to monthly treasurer's reports. The quality of the information coming out of that committee is just incredible now. You get a very clear snapshot of what's happening fiscally in Cupertino. One other thing I'll say about the audit committee is that we often get rather misleading comments with regard to the internal auditor and their work. I want to remind people that ultimately the internal auditor was a function that this council activated because there hadn't been internal auditing prior to when we did that in 2019. And the reason that we activated it is that there was a 14-year embezzlement from 2000 to 2014 that wasn't caught at the time, and it wasn't actually identified until 4 years later in 2018. And so we made a very concerted decision at that point to say, look, internal auditing is extremely important. Moss Adams is who we have retained and have been working with for the last several years now. And yes, absolutely, there were a number of various functions. One of the things, you often hear this talk, and it's extremely misleading, talking about the governance structure of the city of Cupertino. Oh, this is like the second greatest liability. Well, so just let's be very clear about this. What ended up happening there was that there was an internal survey done of the employees, which is completely rightful. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about auditing functions year after year, you're talking about looking at the financial reporting and the various mechanisms and the safety mechanisms of protecting the public dollar. And as mayor this year, I've obviously made it a point to try to make sure that we, for instance, end our meetings timely and we have good interplay. We have so many incredible things that are happening and converging this year. We're coming back live after a 2-year hiatus, and with regard to all the other things that are happening fiscally, that's the heart of your city. And so I'm really happy to report that we have that internal audit, and we're going forward with just very critically important items. With regard to that governance piece of the equation, I do want to say, however, that we hear people. Every system can improve, every mechanism of communication can improve, but at the end of the day, Cupertino is doing incredibly well. We have, like we said, earlier, have a great suite of items that we're working together as a community. You hear this good news, such as the $8 million coming in for the VA shuttle, the $1 million for the Jollyman Park all-inclusive playground, as well as another $5 million for infrastructure of much needed maintenance along McClellan Road at the bridge, and just all sorts of things from the west to the east. And all of this is undergirded by the fact that we have a very fiscally responsible and conservative council that has over time given us a lot of options, especially in these times of greater difficulty. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. I think I was the last person on this item number 3. And so let's go on to item number 4. We have recently instituted a report on subcommittee assignments, because what we also realized administratively over time is that we were forming these subcommittees, but we don't really necessarily have a chance to check back in with the group. And so what we will go ahead and do is make these brief reports out on subcommittee activities, and if we need to agendize something for a fuller subcommittee report, we will go ahead and make that request under item number 4. And so I'll go ahead and move to our Zoom council participants here. Again, council members Willie and Way. Councilmember Willie, you have your hand raised. Did you want to report out on any subcommittee assignments at this time, Councilmember Willie?
So I'll go ahead and touch on it. Vice Mayor and I are on the Farmers Market Subcommittee. To refresh, the farmers market originally was at the Oaks. When the developer was then going to be moving forward with Westport, the farmers market was not allowed to be there over 2 years ago, and has been allowed to stay at the Memorial Park ever since, with almost a 2 or 3 monthly increment for being able to have that location, which is very tough on the farmer's market to know that it's only a temporary. So Memorial Park is now moving forward with the renovations, especially getting rid of the dead ponds. And so now that location is really not suitable for the time being. And so the De Anza College was identified that could host it, providing that they would agree. The vice mayor set up the meetings with the chancellor and the board of De Anza, and they were very willing, but there were a lot of costs for services by the De Anza College, policing that's done there, the union services that have to be done by union. Ultimately, they were willing to waive essentially a lot of the fees, got real hopeful on all that. And then about 6 weeks ago, their best proposal was that they could waive all the fees but $1,300. But $1,300 for a 4-hour farmer's market is a pretty big impact to the farmers that are trying to sell their fruits and vegetables. And so once again, the vice mayor really worked with the board and chancellor, and it appears, it's not a done deal yet, but it appears they're going to even waive that remaining $1,300. So we've got our fingers crossed. I don't want to get too excited until it's a done deal, but the farmers market at De Anza College / Memorial Park is a huge event. I've been there a number of times, and the number of people, primarily residents, but also from Sunnyvale and surrounding communities, it's a huge event. Parking is always a challenge. And so we want to be sure that that remains in our community. So, Vice Mayor, thank you so much. You might want to add some more detail to that, but great job. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Councilmember Woolley. And so we'll get the Vice Mayor when we get done with our Zoom participants. Councilmember Wade, did you want to report out on any subcommittee? Okay, very good. Councilmember Moore, any subcommittee assignments that you'd like to report out on?
Sure. I perhaps an update regarding the subcommittee on the monthly treasurer's reports. So under state and local law, that at least once a month, the city treasurer shall submit to the city clerk a written report and accounting of all receipts, disbursements, and fund balances. And the city treasurer shall file a copy with the legislative body, which would be the city council. And so this has been an ongoing project to work on the format. If you were to pull up the June 27th Audit Committee agenda, you'll see the elements that we've put in to the monthly treasurer's investment report. I'll talk about that one first. So we have the balance for the Chandler investment account, the PARS pension and OPEB statement, the LAIF statement, the Wells Fargo operating checking account statement, the Wells Fargo payroll checking account statement, the Wells Fargo workman's compensation checking account statement, the Wells Fargo employee benefits checking account statement, and the BNY Mellon statement. So those are all in the audit committee recent agenda, and then that group of information, that data, will be coming to the city council in the monthly treasurer's investment report. And then we have a second reporting, which is the monthly treasurer's report showing the receipts, disbursements, and the cash balances for the month. And I want to really thank Thomas Leong, our acting finance manager, for putting these statements together for us and answering questions. So part of what we want to make sure that the public has is kind of a glossary of terms, so when they look at these documents, that they feel more comfortable about what all the language means. And one of the things we're going to be adding is, instead of having the accounts payable come in as separate resolution documents, is adding this together with the receipts disbursements and cash balances report. So there's 2 pages of reports, and then you'll have the accounts payable added to that, which council will be approving. So this is something that the council will be looking at, the recommendations at in the near future to agree to. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Councilmember Moore. Next, we have Vice Mayor Chow. Do you have any subcommittee report outs at this time?
So one thing to add for the Farmers Market Subcommittee, that initial meeting where the Farmers Market directors and De Anza College board president and the president of De Anza College finally were able to sit down, have a talk, was facilitated by Mayor Paul. He really facilitated that meeting so we can all sit together, although he didn't participate. And then, right now, we are fingers crossed. The agreement still needs to be approved by the Foothill De Anza College Board. And then if approved, they are hoping that they would move over in early August or mid-August. And I do have a question regarding the Earthquake Retrofit Subcommittee. I think I asked, we forgot to assign members. I asked the mayor if we can assign that as part of this report. Maybe he forgot. So
No, not at all. I was actually, was that your last subcommittee report out, Vice Mayor Chow?
Yeah.
Because that segues nicely into what I was going to say. So this is my subcommittee request. We cannot assign this right now because we did form the subcommittee, but we didn't populate it. And so my request on the subcommittee report, to be more specific about it, it is a City Hall related subcommittee to conduct an investigation jointly with staff and just to make sure that we are walking in lockstep with regard to what we do with this, the space, whether it's seismic retrofits and upgrades or perhaps after the subcommittee's work, it will be indeed found out that the long-term, more fiscally responsible thing to do is to reconsider the building itself. But we do want to make sure that the public has a really good and solid touch all the way through on how this is working out, especially given the fact that we have multiple work plan items that are active as of last year, but also as of this year. And so we want to make sure that we're walking in lockstep with everything. So my proposal, Vice Mayor Chow, is that we go ahead and place this topic, unless, of course, Chris, our city attorney, Chris Jensen, tells us differently, and perhaps we can, populate the subcommittee now, but I think we probably can't. I would suggest that we agendize this for our next council meeting. Chris, any thoughts on this? I was thinking July 19th, and it would probably be a fairly straightforward thing to ask for people to volunteer, for instance, and approve that subcommittee.
Yeah, that's what I would recommend, Mayor.
Okay, sounds very good. Does
okay.
that cover your concern, Vice Mayor?
Yeah, my original request was to add that to the agenda as a sub-agenda under subcommittee report, like what was done for the city manager report last time, but it's okay, however.
Yeah, let's go ahead and leave that to our acting city manager as well as the staff to figure out where precisely to put that. I forgot to report one more item. The CEP subcommittee, I think we canceled the meeting on the 20th of June. And then we have, I think the consultant has been busy with the site selection, with planning, so we are there. I hope that they will finally be able to schedule that one. However, this committee, I think, has been very ineffective because we are being told that we are not authorized to make any recommendation, and we are only to receive staff recommendation. And I would like to bring this back to the council to get clarification on some of the options that the committee have suggested but not received as by staff. For example, kit in the box way of outreach or other ways of outreach, and that I think we suggested to outreach to employee unions, and rather than just the Anza students, there are outreach to special needs population. That's actually legally required component that we have not done, but I think we need clear direction from the council, what the council expects CEP subcommittee to do. Okay, well, thank you for that
I hope
suggestion,
that,
Vice Mayor, and we'll go ahead and take that.
When the site selection maybe come to the council, this could be considered together. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that last comment as well, and so we'll do our best to align those requests with each other. Okay, so let's go on to the next item. I believe that relates to our city manager, and yes, indeed it does. It's the city manager update, item number 5. Acting City Manager Diane Thompson, would you like to provide this report out on item 5?
I'd be happy to. Good evening, Mayor Paul and City Council. I have just a few brief items. First of all, I wanted to mention that the city is looking for input on options for future uses of the Blackberry Farm Golf Course. And at this point, we have a survey on the city's Engage Cupertino website, which asks for input on potential uses. The survey will close on Friday, July 15th, and the public can find the survey at engagecupertino.org. In addition to the survey, the public is invited to a site tour at the golf course this coming Monday, July 11th at 4 p.m. And those who are interested should meet at the parking lot entrance to the golf course on golf course entry on Stevens Creek Boulevard. I was also going to talk about the great news we received today regarding the Via Cupertino grant of $8.5 million. But the mayor and Councilmember Willie stole a little bit of my thunder on that one. But I do want to mention that our Public Works Department has had wonderful success this year in helping to facilitate the city receiving substantial grant funding. A few of the grants have been mentioned this evening, but I was just going to go through a little bit of a longer list. For the last year, we have received over $16 million in competitive grants, and those include, as was mentioned this evening, Jollyman Park all-inclusive play area of $1 million, the McClellan Road Bridge, which was mentioned, of $5 million, the library expansion project, $1 million, the Via Shuttle program, of course, at $8.5 million, and the Stevens Creek Boulevard separated bike lanes, phase 2 of $807,000. And the public works staff in particular, who I want to recognize for their work on obtaining these grants, are Deputy Public Works Director Chad Mosley, who's also our city engineer, Transportation Manager David Stillman, Senior Transportation Planner Chris Correo, and Project Manager Evelyn Moran. And just want to thank them for their work in making this happen, because as dollars become in short supply, having that grant money can help make these projects materialize and benefit the community much faster. So thanks to them. And that concludes my report for this evening, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thanks very much, Diane. And so we'll go on to our consent calendar at this time. I do see a hand raised from Councilmember Way, and so I think that we have Councilmember Way taking you up on your request for questions. And so, Councilmember Way, welcome.
Yes, Diane, I want to ask the Evan Lowe, Assembly Member Evan Lowe received the $1 million for inclusive playground. Is that in addition to the county's $1 million playground, inclusive playground funding?
Is it in addition to other funding that we've received?
Yes.
No, I believe that. Oh, actually, I'm getting a text message from Chad. He's telling me, yes, that is in addition to the other funding we've received.
That's what I thought, because I received a text from Assembly Member Evan Lowe that he actually applied on behalf of our city for the $5 million for the Stephen McClellan Bridge and the $1 million inclusive playground. So that's really great.
So that is in addition, which is great news for us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Way, as well as Diane once again. So, Vice Mayor Chow, you have your hand raised.
So if I can ask a question, the Via Shuttle,
I do see our city attorney.
So just a reminder, and I perhaps I should have jumped in earlier, that these are reports, and so they're not items that are agendized. So we should try to avoid extensive discussion of them.
Yeah, so I was at that point right now. So but
can
Vice
I
Mayor
ask
Chow,
something that's mentioned in the press release? It says the via would be extended to Santa Clara. I'm just curious, why not other cities, but Santa Clara?
My understanding on that is that other cities may have chosen not to participate.
Oh, so we have some commitment from Santa Clara to participate. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And I was going to mention that, but I anticipated the questions to be fairly brief, and I didn't want to. I didn't want to trip up Diane's mojo on her first report out there. So, happy to entertain that. And let's go on to our consent calendar. And our consent calendar is items 6 through 12. The consent calendar, let me check in with our council to see if anybody would like to pull any of the items on the calendar before I call for a motion on any of the consent calendar items. So let me check in with our council on Zoom. I don't see anybody with their hands raised. I don't see anybody with their hands raised physically here. And so I'll go ahead and call on any of our members of the public that would like to speak on any of our items, consent calendar 6 through 12, before going and coming back to the dais to entertain a motion. Councilmember Moore, you have a hand raised.
Yes. I'd like to pull item 12.
Okay, so Councilmember Moore pulls item 12. May I have a motion for items 6 through 11 as recommended on our agenda for the consent calendar? And Councilmember Way, you have your hand raised. Would you like to move items 6 through 11?
Yes, so moved.
Okay, do we have a second? I see Councilmember Willie with a hand raised.
Yeah, second.
Okay, thank you very much, Councilmember Willie. I don't see any further indicators or hands raised from our council, and so let's go ahead and ask our city clerk to let's conduct a roll call vote, because we are in a true hybrid environment, and of course our council members on Zoom are not able to participate in our voting with the lights from the dais. So, Madam City Clerk.
Councilmember Moore,
Aye.
Councilmember Way,
Aye.
Councilmember Willie,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow,
Aye.
Mayor Paul.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much, Madam City Clerk. And we are on to item number 12 on the consent calendar that was pulled by Councilmember Moore. The subject is consider conforming mitigation measure noise 1 for 22690 Stevens Creek Boulevard, Allen Row, and 10625 South Foothill Boulevard, also known as Canyon Crossing, mixed-use project with noticing requirements in the Cupertino Municipal Code, or CMC Chapter 17.04. So let me hand this to Councilmember Moore to first orient us with regard to the reason that you pulled the item, so that we can address that reason. Councilmember Moore.
Sure. I'd like to understand this amendment for the noise issue with the MNDs for Canyon Crossing and 22690. They're calling this Allen Row. 22690 Stevens Creek Boulevard. I believe that's Beta Brothers, but I'm not entirely sure.
I believe that's correct. Okay, so let's go ahead and refer this to staff. I see Director Ben Fu of Community Development is here. Or Diane, you have your microphone on. Did you want to introduce the staff presenter or give an encapsulation of some addressing of Councilmember Moore's stated reasons for pulling the item?
I was just going to introduce Director of Community Development, Ben Fu.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Diane. And welcome, Director Fu.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Diane. And Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Moore and City Council members, as indicated by the subject line, this is staff's attempt to update mitigation measures in regards to the notification process, specifically the radius as well as duration of notification in regards to construction noise impacts. With that, I will introduce a couple of the project planners on these two projects, Erica Poveda, Jeff Smora. They can provide a little bit more details and a little bit more background on this particular topic for you. But in general, that is what's being asked for you to consider tonight. So Erica and Jeff.
Thank you. I think Jeff will be sharing his screen. Jeff, if you don't mind sharing the larger version. I think right now it's on the notes section.
Apologies.
Okay. Great, thank you. All right. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Erica Poveda, Associate Planner, and I'm joined tonight with by Jeff Zamora, also Associate Planner in the Community Development Department. And we're here to request a modification to the noticing requirements for mitigation measure noise 1 for both the Allen Row, which is Beta Brothers project located at 22690 Stevens Creek Boulevard, and Canyon Crossing project located at 10625 South Foothill Boulevard. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in November 2021, Council adopted CMC Chapter 1704 to identify standard environmental protection requirements that all construction and site improvement projects must comply with. And later in January 2022, Council approved the mitigated negative declarations for both the Canyon Crossing mixed-use project on South Foothill Boulevard and the Allen Row residential project on the corner of Stevens Creek and South Foothill. Since the environmental documents for both projects were completed and presented to the Environmental Review Committee before Chapter 1704 was adopted, the noise noticing requirements of 1704 were not reflected in the M&Ds for either project. Next slide, please. So both projects incorporate mitigation measure noise 1 to address impacts from construction noise. Both the mitigation measure noise 1 and CMC Chapter 1704 requires the applicant to notify surrounding property owners of planned construction activities prior to the start of construction, demolition, or grading. However, there are some differences between the two requirements in regards to noticing radius and timeframe. As indicated in the table, the mitigation measure noise 1 requires noticing to be mailed to property owners within 300 feet of the project site, whereas 1704 requires a 500 noticing radius for these projects. Additionally, while noise 1 requires noticing to be sent at least 90 days prior to demolition or construction activities, the time frame approved through Chapter 1704 is a 10-day notice period. And it's important to point out that the noticing language and details are the same for both Noise 1 and Chapter 1704. And now I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Thank you, Erica. So just piggybacking off of what Erica was explaining between the differences of the language, the applicant is now requesting an amendment, or the applicants for both Allen Row and Canyon Crossing are requesting an amendment to the mitigation measure noise -1 to comply with CMC Chapter 1704. The modification of the mitigation measure requires only an addendum, as it is only a minor or technical correction to an adopted M&D. And in addition to that, recirculation or of the CEQA documents, and the public hearing is not required to approve an addendum. Placeworks, who are the environmental consultants for both projects, as well as the 1704 standards, have prepared an addendum to reflect this proposed modification. The addendum supports the determination that the modification would not change the approved projects, so there would not be any site-specific designs, the amount of development timeline, or any new physical impact to the environment when compared to the approved projects. The noticing radius would increase by 200 feet, as Erica had touched on, and noticing would comply with CMC Section 1704. Therefore, the recommended action is that City Council adopt the following resolutions as shown on your screen to approve a modification for both 22690 Stevens Creek Boulevard, Allen Row, as well as 10625 South Foothill Boulevard, Canyon Crossing.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Let's go to our members of the public that have any comments on this. If there are any, before we go back to council for questions and follow-up comments. After questions from council, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion prior to discussion and comments. I don't see any members of the public that have hand raised, although I do see one now. That is Jennifer. And so, Jennifer, you'll have 3 minutes. I'll remind everyone, please have your hand raised or your blue card in or an email to cityclerk@cupertino.org by the time Jennifer's done speaking in order to be recognized to be heard or speak on this item. Welcome, Jennifer. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Darcy. I wasn't originally going to say anything about this, but it looks like you all have this well in hand that the builders and the city and the residents will know what to expect in terms of construction, noise, et cetera. You know, buildings need to be built, but then again, if you're woken up at 7 o'clock in the morning with, you have a baby that just went to sleep, or you have a senior that has trouble sleeping, and then you have a day filled of construction noise, it can be a bit grating. So at least everyone knows what to expect in this, because I remember when parts of Valco were under construction a number of years ago, we could even hear some of it over here. This was in, I think, 2005, I believe, when they had put up the building. I think they were building the parking garage that was behind the Macy's parking lot. And I believe the neighborhood that was next to the wall had just horrendous noises. That was a major construction back there. It's one of those situations where noise carries at night. I mean, we can hear 280 sometimes really, really loud. People have their windows open at night. Some people have single pane windows. Some people have double pane. But I think that everybody, as long as they know what to expect, you do have the quarry trucks going up and down all the time on parts of Foothill Boulevard coming off of 280. And people are used to a lot of traffic noise through there. But the other thing I was going to say too is ground movement from construction. You could have people's homes could be vibrating. I'm not saying that this would happen, but as long as everyone is on the same page, they understand that this is going to be construction. I mean, we are looking over here in my side of the city. Let's be frank about this. We're looking at potentially 10 years of construction at Valco. I can guarantee you that even at our end of town, we're about a half mile from Valco. We will be hearing noise ongoing. The construction has not begun, but this is the type of situation that I think that as long as everyone knows what to expect and what hours construction will happen, I do hope that there will be phone numbers provided to neighbors so that they can call. So there will be someone designated as a construction manager to receive the phone calls for both construction sites. When the Apple construction Campus 2 was going on, there was a phone number that neighbors could call. And then originally at Valco, first construction, neighbors were given a noise mitigation. I believe there is a number that's responsible currently for Valco now.
15 seconds.
So anyway, just to pass that along. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. There are no other hands on the Zoom function. Madam City Clerk, were there any emails to you or blue cards that came in during this time?
No, Mayor.
Okay, very good. Let's go to Councilmember Moore. Councilmember Moore, you have a hand raised, and we'll go with questions to staff on the item. And Councilmember Moore, since you pulled the item, please feel free to make commentary before I refer to other members of the council for questions or a motion, perhaps. Councilmember Moore.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you to staff for providing the report. So I'm really glad to see the addition of 17.04, the additional environmental code that we've included. I am wondering if this applies to projects which were ministerially approved, and it seems to read that it would be all construction projects. So I'm kind of wondering, because this project it looked like it made it all the way through to approval, and now there's been a change. So I might have to ask my question offline, but so I would like to know if ministerially approved projects also would need to meet these requirements, because I do really appreciate the increase in noticing, but I'm wondering if there's some loopholes to that noticing requirement depending on when a project was approved.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Councilmember Moore. Let's check in with our city attorney as to the parameters of the question. Can even if it's genericized, more basically for ministerial projects, could that question be addressed here?
Yeah, I can address it just briefly.
Okay, very good.
It's so the objective standards do apply to ministerial projects. However, in some circumstances, they could not be applied retroactively to projects that have some kind of early vesting mechanism that prevents applying newly adopted objective standards to projects that have already been approved.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Chris. Thanks for the question, Councilmember Moore. And I see a hand raised. Before you, Vice Mayor Chow, there was a hand raised from Councilmember Willie on Zoom, and so let's go to Councilmember Willie.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ben. Could you put back up the table? I just want to be sure that I'm understanding it correct.
Jeff can pull it up. Just give us 1 second.
Yeah. So as I understand this, with the verbiage that I just heard, the noticing is going from 300 to 500 feet?
That's correct.
Okay, so essentially we're saying the right column is going to be the revised one, correct?
That's correct. Well, the chapter is not being revised, but yes, the mitigation measure is being revised to meet the requirements on the right column.
Because then, I kind of saw, kind of a diagonal confusion. So on that right column, the time frame less than or equal to 10 days prior to construction activities, whereas before, less than or equal to 90 days. I'm confused by the less than. Less than 90 could be 10. I would have thought it would have been greater than 90 or greater than 10, such that if I was the developer starting construction activities in the left column, I could have said, okay, well, 90 days would be the minimum. I'll go ahead and start noticing people at 100 days so that they have plenty of time.
Councilmember?
Yeah.
Sorry, just to clarify, the mitigation measure noise 1, the time frame for that one would be at least 90 days, whereas for Chapter 1704, the requirement is at least 10 days. So
Yeah.
sorry for the confusion with the symbol, but it should read at least for both.
Okay, great. So that answers that. So now the concern, so the noticing radius 500 feet, but dropping it from 90 days prior to construction to 10 days prior to construction. I clearly understand what the resident was saying. Conceivably, nearby residents need a little bit of time to adjust their routine, their setup at home. They may want to move the younger kids farther away from windows nearby, things like that. The 10 days might be a bit of a shock. If it's noticing them 10 days, it comes in the mail. They don't necessarily open the mail for several days. And by then, the noise is there. So I would like to see the 90 days stay intact. I do like the 500 foot radius. two great projects, residential projects, going to bring some additional needed housing to Cupertino. But I do think that we need to be sure we're doing everything we can to alleviate the impacts to the nearby neighbors. So I'd sure like to see that change from the 10 to the 90 day, at least 90 days. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Willie. Let me ask Chris again, what's our latitude here? Is there some kind of range, or is it pretty much, you know?
So council is not legally required to take any particular action. I would say that the recommended action is consistent with the ordinance that council adopted in the fall. I would also say that 90 days is certainly at the longer end of pre-construction notice that you see in these kind of mitigation measures. I mean, at 14 days, I've seen, for example, 10 days, but 90 days is quite long. But there's no requirement that council take any particular action here, and it has discretion to approve or deny this request in whole or part.
Okay, I see. So council could, within its discretion, pick a number between 10 and 90, is what you're saying?
Yes, I would certainly avoid picking anything longer than 90, but yes.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chris. Vice Mayor Chow, you had you were indicating you wanted to speak.
Yeah. So back in November 2nd, 2021, was there any legal requirement so that we reduce the notification period from 90 to 10?
That was sort of based on. And there may be somebody from PlaceWorks that can speak to this, but that was based on recommendations that were developed in collaboration with our consultant.
Oh, yeah, because it's true, if you notify by mail, people might not open daily, and they might receive it 3 days before and be shocked.
Well, staff may be able to clarify how the notice is provided.
And also, I think people might have backyard party planned ahead of time, and then they might find out, a construction will be happening when they have a pre-scheduled party. So I think a longer period makes sense, right? So you are saying today's item is for these two particular projects. We have a discretion to pick a different number, but going forward, if we want to we would need to amend this code.
So you do have you do have discretion to pick a longer number if substantial evidence supports that that's required to mitigate the noise. So certainly, that was the decision the decision that was made when these projects were originally approved, is that a 300-foot radius at 90 days was supported by substantial evidence. The addendum that we provided also provides substantial evidence to support the recommended action, but council could, based on the evidence, reach a different decision, sort of, between those two options.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. So I'm going to go ahead. I do see the applicants here. Before I propose motion, I would like to see whether. Councilmember Moore, you have your hand raised. I haven't gone yet, so let me have a turn at this. So I see representatives of the applicants here. Would a 30-day notice period work out with regard to this? I know 90's. 3 months, 10 days, for the reason stated is, rather brief. So either Dan or Ali, did you want, or both of you want to speak to, from your perspective, the workability of that? So Ali, your hand is raised. Did you want to speak to that? Welcome. And you need to unmute, I think. Let me see if there you go.
My question is that if a project comes along now, which one do you impose? Right now the rule is 10 days, because since we got approval way before, that at that time it was 90 days. So it doesn't mean that if a project comes along right now, you're going to choose between 90 or 10 or 30. It is 10 days right now. Am I mistaken?
Yeah, my understanding is that that's the municipal code at the moment. This was a condition of approval, correct? When you applied, so that was
Right.
90 days at that time. So I think so let me just get a sense of it. I mean, is there, so to speak, some heartburn on that with regard to asking for the 30 days to, have that consideration for the neighbors there to let them turn over their plans and, basically prepare for that.
Okay.
Would 30 days work out? I guess we just.
Yes. It will work out because the way it's going, I don't think we'll be ready in 10 days.
Okay.
We are really struggling to get approval right now.
I see. Okay, Dan, any feedback on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously pretty frustrating from an ownership standpoint. I mean, when we were advised of this at the beginning of June, staff suggested we not send out a 90-day notice and wait and have, and that council would consider this and change it. So at some point it's going to be 90 days anyways if we have to add on 30 since we were first told in May or June. It's frustrating because our environmental hearing was 10 days or 15 days before the city adopted a brand new code that was a 10-day time period. And in 25 years of doing this, I've never seen anything more than, as your city attorney recommended, 14 or 15 days is the most I've ever seen in any other municipality. The only contact I have with all the neighbors around our projects is asking us what's taking so long to get it demoed and get rid of the eyesore and get rid of the buildings. And I will tell you that I think I expressed this to staff as well. I was the owner of the building in Campbell that went up in flames on Dell Avenue and polluted, the creek and caused all kinds of problems. And there still is uncertain of whether or not there was a couple of homeless people that perished in that. And that was all because an empty building was sitting vacant, which creates a nuisance and creates time for bad things, in my opinion, to get into the buildings, do things they're not supposed to be doing. So I don't really understand the delay. We've had a construction fence around it for 6 to 9 months. The community, again, the only thing I've heard from them is, why aren't you taking the buildings down?
Okay,
So,
well, Dan, thank you for that context. I appreciate that. That's good information for sure. And it's good to hear the arc of your experience since you last visited us. With regard to the council, the public consultation is the first that we see of this particular issue as agendized. So let me at this point, prior to calling for a motion, go to Councilmember Moore, who had a hand raised. Councilmember Moore?
Thank you. And this is a question for staff again. So in the PlaceWorks, the initial study MND that we have, with the final version, we have the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, and I'm looking at 22690 Stevens Creek Boulevard, that particular project in Chapter 5, and I'm wondering, because it says that the agency responsible for the monitoring in most cases is the City of Cupertino Public Works Department and the building department. To my knowledge, I haven't ever seen the monitoring reports. So where can we, members of the public, see the monitoring reports to reflect that the mitigations are actually being conducted? Because I have heard some mentioned that some of the public on some other projects didn't believe that the mitigations were actually being conducted, and so with an MND, you're not going to an EIR. You're saying that these impacts can be mitigated, and explaining how that's going to happen. So where can we see the monitoring reports, and what happens if the mitigation monitoring or the mitigation didn't actually take place? How would one raise that concern? Thank you.
Can I ask you, Councilmember Moore, how you believe that your question is germane to the topic in front of us with regard to the amount of time? So I just want to make sure that we're on track with regard to the purview of the noticed item here.
Well, we're looking at the noise impact from the MND, so I want to know when they actually, there's a mitigation that they have to perform, and I want to know where that report actually goes.
I understand. So let me check in with the city attorney. Is this workable? I mean, I understand that it's kind of tangentially related piece of information. Chris?
It's tangential, but germane for Brown Act purposes.
Okay, fair enough. All right, anyone from our city staff like to address Councilmember Moore's with question with regard to the reports here? I see.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Director Fu.
If I may, I can get us started, and I'll have Erica and Jeff support. Projects are required to submit the mitigation measure reporting program documents. So my understanding is that the projects have submitted as part of the project records. I don't know if Erica and Jeff, anything to add to that?
Sure. So specifically for 22690 Stevens Creek, it's actually attached to the resolution. So this, I could share my screen really quickly. Sorry. Okay, so we have on page 12 of resolution 22-007, approving the mitigation measure and the mitigation monitoring and report program. So council actually approved this program back in January. This is the monitoring report program. So it identifies the mitigation measure, timeframe, and who is responsible. In terms of ensuring that those mitigations are completed, that would be done primarily through staff as indicated by this monitoring report, through ensuring that the applicants meet all conditions of the project. So depending on the timeline or the time frame, applicants would not be able to, for instance, get final occupancy until all of these conditions are met. So similar to other projects, it acts as a condition of approval.
Okay, thanks very much. Councilmember Moore, you have a follow-up?
Yes. So the question is, how can members of the public see these reports?
Okay.
They're on public records.
And
from the resolution.
They're on public records where?
In the resolution.
In the resolution. Okay. But these reports are they updated? I mean, the resolution is static, right?
The report is not an ongoing report. It's the monitoring report that I just shared my screen. So it was approved with the resolution.
Oh, they're part of the resolution as part of the agenda packet that you're making. Okay. Councilmember Moore, any other follow-ups on that?
Yes. So the question isn't what the monitoring is supposed to be. It's how can we see the actual documentation on the monitoring to know that it happened.
Right. I thought that was understood as part of the question.
So let me clarify. So
Yes.
So the monitoring is the responsibility of the permittee. For something like a noise complaint, a noise violation that like other city code enforcement activities, those are going to be primarily complaint-based. So if we get a complaint from a neighbor, we would investigate it. But it's similar to other enforcement of our community noise ordinance and pretty much all of the code enforcement that the city does is it's complaint-based. And that's common in it's this practice in Cupertino and the practice in most jurisdictions.
Okay, look, I'm going to shut this down now because I think it's a good line of questioning, but it really is running afield of the focus of the topic here. to my way of thinking, we're at either 10 days on the one end or 90 days on the other end. And I'm kind of inclined at this point, listening to the experiences as related. And I think we could always improve processes. Let me ask two quick questions. One question is, if we're in the middle of a situation where we need to go to council to get it basically cut from 90 days, 10 days, why not have the notice sent out earlier? Or is there like some kind of, is there some kind of consideration that I'm not seeing? I mean, if essentially the applicant was being told back in May, hey, let's try to get this cut down to 10 days in front of council, why not send the notice out at that point? Is there a practical consideration I'm not seeing? My second question harkens back to a comment that our city attorney made. What is the nature of the notice? Is this a mail notice? Is this something else? So that we understand what the situation here actually is. I know that for mail notices in other contexts, you do actually get a few extra days of an obligation to, for instance, allow responses in, litigation context. But so can you let us know the information on those two pieces of those two questions?
Mayor Paul.
I'm going to refer this to So I'm sorry, Jeff. Our vice mayor was indicating to me, but go ahead and please address those questions. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. I could speak on the nature of noticing. So this does. Notices do get mailed out via first-class mail. Verification of the mailing is submitted by the applicant to city staff to document.
Okay, so first-class mail, and there's not something like an extra 5 days put upon. So if it were to get mailed today, for instance, on July 7th, is that considered day one of the noticing period, or is there actually more time elapsed added to the 10 days? You see what I'm saying? So if you mail it on July 7th, can you start the construction activity on July 17th?
I believe it will go off of the day that it's postmarked, which will start the 10-day clock. On the actual construction notice, applicants will be providing an estimated construction start date of when the actual construction will be taking place. So that doesn't necessarily have to be exactly 10 days. It could be a few days after, but as long as the construction start date is indicated on that notice, that's right. What we go off of.
The idea is at least 10 days. I got it. Okay. I see Councilmember Way with a hand raised, as well as Vice Mayor Chow. We have had around, Councilmember Way, I don't recall if you've had ability to speak on this yet, so let me call on you. I know Vice Mayor Chow has, so let's go ahead and take your comments prior to bringing forth a motion. Councilmember Way.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. So I have two questions. The first question is, we do have an ordinance that put at least 10 days. So if we have the issue, maybe we could update that. The second is for the applicants. If we, like Councilmember Willie and Councilmember Moore were concerned about 10 days too short, if we do a 30 days, would that affect your construction dates?
Well, Councilmember Way, I think that's a pretty self-evident question, right? I mean, of course, it's going to affect it by 20 days, essentially, right? And I think the applicants have spoken to that question as well, right?
My question is, are they ready to start within 10 days? If that's the case, we have our ordinance. I don't see, the places are already people know that, neighbors know that it's going to happen. So I would think 10 days will be okay in this case because, it's there for a long time.
Okay,
so,
I do see a hand raised by Dan Shaw, so let me refer that question to him. And Dan, you'll need to unmute your microphone if you want to be heard.
Thanks, Darcy. There's really two components here. There's demolition, and then there's starting of construction. We're not actually ready to start construction of new buildings. We don't have a building permit yet. The issue is demolishing these older buildings, which are dangerous. They create opportunities for bad activities to occur. Homeless people, that's really our concern, is just taking down what's there. And we've already gone through all of our pre-demolition thing, which means removing asbestos in proper manners, dealing with all of those other hazardous things on the site. That's all been done. We need a couple of days to demolish the building, and then it's going to be a vacant piece of land that's going to wait for a few months, like Ollie said, to get the building permit. So our plea is to let us get the building down and from a safety standpoint, turn it into a flat piece of land where it's very unlikely that we have things that can catch on fire, people get hurt, injured, kids goofing around, those kind of things. That's my plea. We're not anywhere close to actually starting construction or driving piers into the ground or digging an underground parking garage like we are planning on doing. That's a few months down the road.
Understood. Thanks so much. Okay, so very quick question. This would affect the entirety of the projects, though, right? Not just the demo phase. It would affect and this is for staff. Can anyone speak to this if we were to go ahead and pass this request?
It would affect the demo permit. The notice itself is any construction related activities, so that would include demo.
Well, it would include demo, but it would include everything else, right, with regard to the construction of this project?
Correct.
Okay, got it. Okay, I'm going to ask for a motion at this point. I would suggest 14 days. I think that it does, provide a little bit more time for the neighbors. It's the difference between a week and a half and 2 weeks. Councilmember Willie, your hand is raised. Would you be willing to if I set forth that motion, to second the motion?
I would second that motion. Can I just make a couple comments?
Okay, sure. And just to clarify, I'm talking about a 500-foot radius in addition to the 14 days.
Yes. So, I definitely hear the applicants. Yes, I think they've created a pretty good narrative that their fences have been up for quite a while. The residents probably know that it's going to start happening, but rather than just all of a sudden it does happen, they get that notice. But I think what is another important factor is, when we are talking about demolition, we heard that when Valco started its demolition, the residents that were on the adjacent properties all of a sudden had all kinds of dirt and stuff raining down on their property and their cars and went in the windows. So I do think the noticing, especially for demo, much more so than for construction, is of importance to neighbors. So I would hope that going forward, staff would work with a 30-day notice, indicating that first noticing is going to reflect probably demolition activities. But in this instance, I really like your 14-day. I think that gives the little bit of window for the Postal Service, and the residents have a little bit of time. They probably know about it, but at least it wouldn't be a total shock. So I second your motion. I would ask that staff work with a 30-day update to the ordinance rather than the place work 10 days going forward. Bring it back to us for that future plan.
Thank you, Councilmember Willie. I see two hands raised from the dais, one from Vice Mayor Chow, followed by Councilmember Moore. Vice Mayor.
Okay, so this is attachment G in the agenda packet. So it does say that it will be mailed out by first class mail, and it says that the letter will include a description of the project, activities that would occur, and hours when activity would occur. And then to answer Councilmember Willie's question, there will be telephone numbers of the contractors' authorized representatives for people to contact in case of any noise or vibration complaint. So this is all in the letter. But I tried, I think the ordinance 17.4 was approved on November 2nd, 2021. I went to that agenda. It was the second reading. And then I tried to look for earlier council agenda. I couldn't find when the first reading was done. On November 2nd, there is only one document of the second reading, no staff report. So if the staff can remind me when we have this place work document to show the evidence that 10 days is recommended based on the evidence. rather than 90 days, I would like to read that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Vice Mayor Chow. And well, let me see if there's a ready answer from staff. Do you guys happen to know when that first reading of this ordinance was? 1704?
I recall it was in October. I don't remember which meeting.
October sometime? Okay, thanks, Chris. All right, Vice Mayor, thank you very much. Councilmember Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Paul. I would like just a quick clarification, because the municipal code says, and it's in the report as well, at least 10 days prior to the start of construction activities. Let's see, let me get to the right part. Where is it? It's the, prior to the start of any demolition, ground disturbing, or construction activities. And my concern is that just a one-time noticing that you would be doing? Let's say you're going to demolish the buildings, and then the project's going to sit idle for a little bit while the next crew comes in, and let's say that idleness is 4 months before a grading crew is allowed to come out and do let's say the excavation for the subterranean garage at Canyon Crossing. Would there be a second round of noticing for that? Because that is going to potentially have dust that the neighbors would want to know about. So if there's a lag between the construction phases, will the noticing repeat, or is it just one time at the start?
Can you want to speak to that? All right, Director.
I can try that, through Mr. Mayor, Councilman Moore. Yeah, that's the code only requires a one-time noticing at this point. But there will also be, I believe, a sign posted on site as well. So that will be continuous throughout the construction of the project site.
Okay, great. Well, let's go ahead. I don't see any further hands raised at this point. I would like to ask for a vote on the motion that's on the table. So, council members, thank you very much. And Madam City Clerk, could you please conduct a roll call vote?
Councilmember Moore?
I do want to point out that there are several edits that go along with these documents that'll need to happen. Thank you.
Councilmember Way?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Can I clarify, does this include the 30-day direction to come back to amend the municipal code?
It does not.
So no, this is only for the mitigation. Okay.
That's correct.
Aye.
Yep, I don't think we're noticing.
Mayor Paul?
Yes, thank you very much.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, we're on to item number 13. A brief time check, we're at 8:22. We started at 6:45. So let's go on to item number 13 at this time. So item number 13 is a study session on an update on drought conditions and the city of Cupertino's ongoing water conservation measures for city operations and providing input on potential future water conservation measures. And so I think that our presenter, as indicated on the agenda, is Jimmy Tan, the Assistant Director of Public Works and Operations. And so, Jimmy, why don't you take away the presentation? Welcome. And Jimmy might want to unmute your microphone, or whoever is presenting the presentation tonight. Okay, anyone? We're not getting volume out here, so. And I also do.
Okay, here we go. Sorry about that.
Okay, great. Welcome.
Sorry, I should have, get used to this. It's been only 2 years, right? So good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm Jimmy Tan. I'm the Assistant Director of Public Works and Operations. I'm here tonight, with representatives from the Santa Clara Valley Water District and California Water Services and San Jose Water Company to provide an overview of the drought status and water conservation measures and efforts that are happening. And since this drought update is important topic for the community, we do have multiple slides to share tonight. So try to be efficient with our time and go through the presentation as fast as possible. So the agenda for the presentation is follow. Valley Water will provide an overview of the drought status and the drought impacts. I'll share information on where the municipal water is being used in the city, then discuss the city's water conservation efforts, then turn the presentation over to California Water Services and San Jose Water to present their water conservation efforts and programs. And lastly, we'll share our next steps and answer any council's questions and community questions as well.
Good evening, I'm Nita Bijour, Senior Water Resources Specialist at Valley Water. Regarding our drought status, we are in the third year of drought and it is severe. We've had the driest first 3 months on record this year for the county and the state. And in fact, a recent article in the Mercury explained that Northern California only received about 2/3 of the rain we normally get over the last 3 years, which means we missed an entire year of rain during the drought. We import about half of our water supplies from outside the county, and these supplies depend on our Northern Sierra snowpack. It's well below normal, and the imported water that we've received is at historic lows. Our local water supplies are also extremely low, especially with our largest reservoir, Anderson, not available due to seismic retrofitting. So consequently, water conservation is very important in order for us to preserve our remaining supplies and to protect our groundwater so that we can avoid land subsidence and dry wells. Next slide, please. Valley Water did take very early and proactive drought action. Thanks to the leadership of our board, we declared a water shortage emergency in June last year. We called for water use reduction of 15% compared to 2019. And we also took efforts to secure emergency transfers of imported water. We boosted our conservation messaging and doubled the rebate for our landscape conservation program. Next slide, please. Our county's water savings is headed in the right direction. So compared to 2019, our baseline, our latest savings number from May shows that we're at 2% savings. The cumulative savings since our call was made is 3%. So until May, water use this year was higher than 2019. So in May, we started to finally see savings. We do need to make much more progress to reach our call. Valley Water did launch an enforcement program in June to enforce our outdoor water waste restrictions. We've also expanded our outreach, and we're hoping to see further declines in water use. Next slide, please. So this slide here shows our water savings compared to the states, and we've generally performed better than the state, but we still need to make much more progress. The state's using a baseline of 2020 shown here. We believe that enforcement and our increased public messaging will help us increase savings. Next slide, please. Since we haven't seen savings that we need to see so far, Valley Water's board did adopt an enforcement ordinance for outdoor water waste, and we are enforcing restrictions against runoff, midday watering, watering after rainfall, and watering for more than 2 days a week. And we may add enforcement of the state's commercial and industrial turf watering ban into our ordinance as well. We have been coordinating very closely with our retailers on enforcement. We're also focusing on providing educational notifications so people can identify and correct the waste. And fines will only be for those who ignore the repeated notifications to correct water waste. We did launch our enforcement program on June 1st, and since then, we've had over 500 reports of water waste violations, which we are addressing. Next slide, please. So we launched our Yes to Saving Water messaging campaign. We have information on conservation as well as enforcement. It's on TV, radio, social media, print, buses, billboards, and more. We also have provided cities and retailers with a toolkit on outreach resources that they can share as well. We're also sending out a mailer to every home and business in the county regarding conservation. Next slide, please. We've been messaging on our conservation programs tremendously. Our participation has increased during the drought, and we have programs available for everyone, including homes, businesses, farms, and they address both indoor and outdoor use. Next slide.
So as far as Cupertino, the slide shows information in regards to where and how much water is being used at city facilities. So as you can see, majority of the water is being used at parks and schools to irrigate the turf. The city maintains approximately 19 parks, actually maintains 19 parks and approximately 148 acres. And the city has a joint use agreement with the school district to maintain the turf at 9 school sites, totaling approximately 46 acres as well. The school turf and the city's parks are programmed for use, and it's currently being irrigated, but the irrigation cycle has been reduced to conserve water. The remaining water is being used at golf course, medians, facilities, landscaping, and facilities. So during the previous drought, the city implemented water conservation measures which are being used today. The city, amended the city ordinance 15.32, the water conservation. The city also developed water conservation measures for city operations, and this document includes guidelines on water use restrictions at city facilities, depending on the mandate or recommendations imposed by Valley Water. This document also includes a description and actions of various stages of drought as well. Since the city does not operate our own water system, the city also partnered with Valley Water and water retailers to offer and promote additional rebates for gray water and landscape conversions and installation of rainwater capture devices. So what conservation measures is the city taking for this drought here? The city staff has been proactively implementing water conservation measures to save water, such as the installation of the water efficient fixtures in our buildings, installing drip irrigation systems in our medians and parks, converting landscapes to drought tolerant landscaping, and installation of smart irrigation controllers to regulate the use of water. So to date, the city's Trees and Right-of-Way Division has converted 45 controllers to smart controllers, and the Grounds Division has replaced 33 of 48 irrigation controllers with smart controllers as well. So during this drought, the city is continuing to implement the measures that were previously developed, such as the items that you see on the slide. The turf irrigation has been limited to 2 days per week at programmed areas, and an interactive fountain at community hall has been turned off. And the city is not using water, to clean the asphalt or sidewalks in plaza areas as well. To date, the city data shows that, there's a decrease of 6% in municipal water use from July 2021 to April 2022, compared to the same range of months in 2019. So as previously mentioned, the city has partnered with Valley Water on various water conservation programs. So this table shows various items that the city, the property owners have participated in over the years. The data for 2022 is up to date as of March 2015. So the city is continuing to promote and provide matching rebates for property owners who apply for incentives provided by Valley Water and the 2 water retailers. So since 2019, the city's property owners have utilized incentives to install about 115,000 square feet of drought-tolerant landscapes, about 20 rain barrels, 93 weather-based irrigation controllers as well. So since 2019 to 2021, the city also contributed approximately 54,000 for landscape rebate cost share program as well.
Hi, good evening. I'm Dawn Smithson. I'm the district manager for Cal Water for the Los Altos Suburban District. First of all, thank you very much for having us this evening to discuss this really important topic. I'm going to take just 5 seconds to tell you a little bit about Cal Water, because I've noticed we confuse some people. We have customers in 5 states, Hawaii, New Mexico, Washington, Texas, and with most of our customers in California. So we have about 26 water districts that we own or operate. all the way from Chico in the north down to LA in the south. And we're a district on the peninsula of the Los Altos Suburban District. So we serve Los Altos Hills and then portions, as you know, of Cupertino, and then Los Altos Hills, Mountain View, and Sunnyvale. We serve approximately 70,000 customers through 19,000 connections. I'm going to stop boring you about us and turn you over to the Cal Water star of the night, Anthony Meyer. He's our conservation coordinator, and I've also brought with me tonight Rob Seeley, who's our government and community relations specialist.
All right, welcome.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Dawn, very much. And good evening, everybody. My name is Anthony Meyer, and I am the Northern and Central Regional Conservation Coordinator for Cal Water. We can go ahead and move to the next slide. So this slide just kind of gives us a little indication of kind of how things have progressed over from 2021 to present. Obviously, once we start really realizing the significance of the drought, we have to start getting our balls rolling as far as getting things into place. So as of October of last year, we filed stage 2 of our water shortage contingency plan with the CPUC. After that, it was approved fairly quickly. And as of December 14th, stage 2 of our prohibited uses and irrigation day restrictions went into effect. Next slide, please. So obviously, with the prohibited uses of water that have already been in place, one thing that we have found, a lot of people, either they weren't aware of them, or over time, they just kind of thought maybe these went away. So as we've been doing a lot of public outreach. We've been doing TV, social media, mailers, bill inserts, a lot of public presentations, both virtual and in person, and then a lot of webinars too, just to kind of educate the public, obviously not just about the prohibited uses of water, but things that they can do at home to try to meet their conservation goals. We can go to the next slide. So with us, probably one of the most notable changes as we have moved into stage 2 of our water shortage contingency plan is the adoption of irrigation day restrictions. In keeping with surrounding municipalities and other districts, for our Los Altos Suburban District, water is now limited to 2 days a week outdoors and not between the hours of 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Your watering days are based upon the ending number of your street address. So for odd number addresses, Tuesdays and Saturdays are the watering days. And if it's an even number that it ends in or no number, Wednesdays and Sundays are the watering days. I will point out that we have some exceptions that we've allowed to be part of our irrigation day restrictions. And with that, any landscape zones that exclusively use either drip irrigation or micro spray, those types of landscape or irrigation zones do not have to confine within those watering days or hours. One of the reasons for this is that we consider that to be a high efficient form of delivering water directly to the root system of those plants. And another reason for that is we want to encourage people that own properties to consider adapting or retrofitting over their existing overhead spray irrigation to drip irrigation where that's applicable, obviously with putting an emphasis on wanting to keep trees alive and things of that sort. Next slide, please. So an additional and obviously more notable provision as we moved into stage 2 is the CPUC has authorized us to impose penalties. Obviously, this is more in the vein of where they need to be applied. From our personal standpoint, the last thing we want to be doing is obviously policing our customers. But in the past, we've always met our conservation goals, and we've always been able to just achieve what we want to achieve by outreach and education, and mostly just communication with, obviously our water consumers. In most cases, a first violation, what it's going to really look like is we're just going to be calling that customer or leaving them a door hanger, just making sure that they're aware of what those restrictions are. Obviously, though, if something continues to occur, we have the provision that we can, for a second violation, we can impose a $50 penalty. For a third violation, it can result in a $100 penalty, and this actually can be on a per-day basis if that violation continues to occur. And for fourth violations and egregious violations, which are intentional, after being notified, it can actually result in a flow restricting device being installed on the customer's service line. Next slide, please. So one of the biggest things we're trying to really put emphasis on right now, because we know that 60% is an average, but we've seen as upwards as much as 80% of domestic water, potable water, is applied towards outdoor use. So we put a lot of emphasis on our outdoor programs. Obviously, we do have indoor programs designed to bring down internal water inside the homes and businesses, but our big focus right now is obviously putting our goals in our programs to center around outdoor water use. We encourage our customers to obviously do a thorough evaluation of their irrigation system, look for leaks, maybe outdated equipment, adjust their watering schedules, obviously, to meet the new requirements, install a smart irrigation controller, in any way that is applicable, convert overhead spray sprinklers to drip irrigation. And last but definitely not least, consider looking and taking a second look at those large thirsty areas of turf and consider converting those over to drought-friendly landscaping. And I will point out with each one of these bullets, we have a program that actually centers around each one of these particular things. Next slide, please. So in recent months, we have really ramped up our programs with regard to conservation. In most cases, we have as much as doubled the rebate amounts for all these programs. For residential programs, we've ramped them up to where high efficiency indoor items, washers now are $300 is the rebate on them. We're rebating obviously on MAP qualified toilets, high efficiency sprinkler nozzles, and then we do have a lawn to garden and spray to drip program for residential customers as well. Next slide, please. In keeping with trying to obviously make sure that commercial customers aren't left out, we've actually ramped up our programs also for commercial, for high efficiency valve type toilets, tank type toilets, urinals, obviously a huge impact. We have a lawn to garden and spray to drip program for commercial. And one real cool thing that we've recently developed is we have what we call it our customized incentive program. So for a commercial customer, if we can identify some type of really niche or boutique program or something, we could custom tailor it for that particular industry or that program if it doesn't fall directly inside the scope of one of our existing programs. Next slide, please. So this is definitely probably the most popular one since we've rolled it out. This is called our Smart Landscape Tune-Up Program. Basically what this program entails is you can sign up on our website within just a matter of minutes. After that, we will actually send out Valley Soil, our licensed contractor, will contact the customer, and they're going to make an appointment to come out to that home or business. And when they get there, they're going to do a very thorough evaluation of that customer's irrigation system. Obviously, we're putting an emphasis on this because it curtails to outdoor water use. And so once they come to that customer's home or business and they've made that thorough evaluation of the system, they're going to be looking for leaks, maybe some broken equipment, identify any type of really significant water saving opportunities there. Typically, that'll involve installing a smart irrigation controller, upgrading nozzles, retrofits, things of that sort. Then they're going to give us those recommendations. And after we approve it, they're going to call the customer. They're going to schedule a secondary appointment, at which point they will come out and they will perform all of those upgrades, repairs, and installations completely free to the customer. They actually do all the work. They send us the bill and we pick up the entire tab. So as you can imagine, this has become quite a popular program since we recently rolled it out. Next slide, please. And last but not least, we have our lawn to garden and spray to drip programs. We've actually ramped up the rebate amounts on this, just like I said, to try to kind of capture people and get them to reconsider some of those thirsty areas of turf. We've raised our rebate amount to $3 per square foot of lawn that's removed, and we have a requirement of 50% of that area being converted to drought-tolerant landscaping. In addition to that, we have what we call our spray to drip program, which will give a rebate of an additional 50 cents per square foot for that same area, as long as the overhead standard spray irrigation system is converted over to drip. Next slide, please. And we always like to show this annually. We do produce a conservation report just to show that, obviously engagement in these programs, it's calculable, it's measurable. And we do track it just in our Los Altos Suburban district last year in 2021. Engagement with these programs, we anticipate are going to save 35 million gallons of water over their lifetime. So obviously, we put a lot of emphasis on this and trying to make sure we get people to engage in these programs. And with that, I will turn it over to Robert Seeley, our Government and Community Affairs Specialist.
Great. Thanks, Anthony. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you, and thank you, Council, for having us here tonight. So I just have one slide to present to you, but what I wanted to do was kind of talk about engaging with the public and understanding how we're doing this and what we've seen as success, and as this goes forward, how we continue with that. So this graph basically indicates the water use per individual resident from 2002 all the way up to 2021. And what we see here is a continued trend, even through droughts and tougher years and wetter years. We're seeing this continuous trend of less and less usage. And the way that we've been able to achieve that, both in really good years as well as really dry years, has been education. And so as we think about outreach to the public and how we're all going to leave here tonight and kind of talk about this and work towards these goals, this is one thing that we can share with you from experience has really worked for long-term adoption, and that is that engagement. There's, of course, always the penalties, which Anthony covered a little bit of earlier, but that initial outreach and letting people know and educating them as to what they can do and what water waste looks like, the 60% or more that happens outside in the summertime, those are really, really impactful. And what we see in those that we don't necessarily see with a more punitive approach is the long-term adoption, which this graph really represents. And so I wanted to close this out simply by saying that one of the biggest things that all of us can do as we leave or keep in mind is just spreading that word and spreading that engagement and that education to these people and these folks. Being a resource, we find that most people want to do the right thing and the good thing here. So thank you very much for your time and for having us out, and we look forward to any questions you have.
Great. Thanks very much. Looks like San Jose Water's next. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Leanne Walborski. I'm the Director of Corporate Communications at San Jose Water, and I want to thank you so much for having us here. In terms of our drought response, as soon as Valley Water declared the drought last June, we got busy and immediately filed with the CPUC on June 18th, 2021. We started pushing out all of our drought messaging, telling people to only water twice a week, not to wash their cars in their driveway, not to clean off the sides of their homes. Basically, we began pushing this out early. We had our mandatory conservation plan authorized November 15th and put it into effect around December 13th. Basically, we give people allocations based on their 2019 usage. We've done this as a way to protect our great super savers, our low water users. And people will get drought surcharges if their allocations are exceeded. And there is an appeal process if people feel that somehow their numbers are unfair, their allocation is unfair. Basically, if your allocation is 10 units of water, and this is based on 2019. We're going by what Valley Water suggested to cut 15% from 2019. If your allocation is 10 and you use 11 units of water per month, you'll be charged $7.13. That's basically the surcharge that we're doing. That's how we're kind of asking people to please conserve. Next slide, please. So we have lots of information about the drought that we've pushed out to our customers. We've got pages on our website with all kinds of our mandatory conservation plan details, all kinds of drought updates. Every time Valley Water comes out with their numbers, letting us know how we did in the prior months, we let our customers know. We've got FAQs. We've got a leak status map, and we push everything out on all of our channels, social media. We sent out a brochure with all of the information explaining our allocation process and our mandatory conservation plan. Next slide, please. We offer all kinds of conservation tips and information. We have our catch visit, which we send someone out to people's homes to let them know how they can conserve water better, or if they have leaks, help them figure out what's happening with their bill. We offer water-wise gardening info on our website. We have conversation tips in several languages. We link up to the Valley Water Rebates on our website, and we have other incentives. We show people how to read their meters. We put out tips on social media. We're always telling people, and we are also mainly focused on outside irrigation. As we know, this is the main area where people can save. It's much harder, I think, to save with indoor water use. So we're very focused on outdoor irrigation. Next slide, please. In terms of customer communications, as I mentioned before, we sent out a direct mail with all the information about our mandatory conservation plan. We have information in bill inserts. We've done webinars where we invite the public and elected officials. We have, again, social media efforts where we talk about conservation, drought, our bill pay assistance, that we're here to help in any way we can. Just trying to get as much information out there as possible on every channel we have. Next slide, please. So again, we put information about rebates for lawn replacements and irrigation equipment. This is through Valley Water. We have information where you can order free water saving devices, shower heads, information about items you can use at your home. And we have an online form to report water waste and leaks, because that does happen a lot. There's a leak, people see it, they get very upset, and they let us know. Either they'll take a picture and send it to social media, we'll see it and we'll send some, we'll report it, and somebody will go out there and check it out. This month, for the next 2 months, we've got a bill insert, which also includes information from Valley Water, kind of a joint Valley Water, San Jose Water bill insert going out to every customer. Next slide, please. In terms of our water loss audit, the most recent numbers we have are for 2020. Our non-revenue water, that would be water that is used for everything from firefighting to leaks, water that simply doesn't make it from point A to point B, totaled about 5.9%. This is, according to the EPA, very good number. The industry average is something like 14%. And then we also have our infrastructure leakage index, which is within a statistic within the non-revenue water. Again, we are considered world-class with 1.02. It's a leading benchmark standard for evaluating how our system is performing over time compared to other utilities. And all of this information is publicly available on the state website, which you can see the URL below. Next slide, please. And we've got a lot of ways to help our customers. Just one other thing to point out about the leaks, which I forgot to mention, was that we have about 8,000 sensors deployed. We've detected 233 leaks, which were fixed in 2021. We saved about 350 million gallons of water in 2021. In terms of the way that we help our customers, we have extended payment plans, very flexible extended payment plans with no interest. We had the arrearage program, which applied to about 45% of Cupertino residential customers with overdue balances. This was something from the US government. Sorry about my dogs. We've got LEWAP, the low-income household water assistance program, which we've just started pushing out information about. Customers can get a payment of up to $2,000, a one-time payment. This is being processed through Sacred Heart. And then there's RAP, which is now called CAP, our customer assistance program, which is based on income eligibility. So we've got a lot of ways to help our customers through this very difficult time with the pandemic and inflation and everything that's happening. So lots of ways we are here to help. And that's about it. Thank you so much for having us here.
Great, thank you. And next steps for Cupertino here is the city will continue to monitor the current water conservation measures and look for ways to reduce additional water consumption within our facilities. And we'll also continue to coordinate with the water retailers, Valley Water, San Jose Water, and California Water Services. So this concludes our presentation. We'll be available to answer any questions.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Jimmy. thank you for putting this together. I was really happy to, push to make sure that we have this very important topic covered. I'm also really thrilled that all of our water providers and the water district are represented here. So thank you to Nita of the water district, as well as our 3 Cal Water representatives. Thank you, Dawn, Robert, and Anthony for being here, as well as Leanne from San Jose Water, and all of your colleagues that are here. I note that Nai Shui, actually, our water district representative, is here in the attendees as well. So thanks very much. Let me go first to the attendees, speaking of whom, and if anyone has any comments, please raise your hand at this time. Obviously, it's a extremely important topic, but also something that takes a lot of information and consideration. I don't see the hands raised from the public at this time, so what I'll do is I will ask our city clerk, Kirsten, did we have any blue cards or emails that you've received with regard to this topic on the study session today?
No, Mayor, we have not.
Okay, very good. So let me go ahead and go back to council. This has been an excellent set of presentations. I know that for the various coverages throughout the city, of course, the water district covers all of us, but Cal Water and San Jose Water have different areas. I know for my own part, we're covered by Cal Water, and we'll certainly refer my HOA, for instance, to the various types of information that was presented, and I'm certain that's quite relevant to all parts of our city for our respective coverages. And so thanks again for that. I see Councilmember Woolley as a hand raised. Councilmember Woolley, did you have a question or any comments that you'd like to raise?
Yeah, thank you. So many presenters, thank you all. I mean, after seeing the first slide of California with so much red and orange, severe, extreme severe, really quite scary in the sense, having grown up in the valley, and there was always, plenty of water. This, in the last 10, 15 years, 20 years has, really been different that we have to adjust to. So the comments that I'd have, first one I'll start, when I see that California map, 3 years of severe drought, I don't want to scare anybody, but I'd kind of like to know, I like to be able to kind of forecast. If the rainfall continues going forward, what does 5 years from now look like? What does 10 years from now look like? If we're drawing down on the groundwater and things of that nature, and we only have snowpack at 2/3, what does it look like for us in 5 years and 10 years? That's the first question.
Those are excellent questions. Would anyone like to address that from any of our representatives or our city staff? Feel free to
I can start.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
If you'd like. This is Kirsten Struve, Assistant Officer for Valley Water for the Water Supply Division. And obviously, we think about that question a lot. And thank you for asking it. So yeah, we do our water supply master planning. We look out even further than 5 years. And one of our board policies is that during a drought, we would supply 80% of the demand. So we can call for up to 20% of conservation. This time around, we called for 15, so we can increase that as well. And we look at all our different projects that we can invest in to make sure that we are more drought resilient. And one of those things is purified water. So we have a project going on where we would take wastewater that would normally go to the bay, treated wastewater, and purify it to drinking water levels so that we can then recharge our groundwater with that. It's a really exciting project. And between purified water and water conservation, we hope to be more drought proof, but also with more reliable infrastructure, investing in our imported water contracts. We're also developing a drought response plan currently with all our retailers and stakeholders. So we are doing a lot of planning to make sure the dire situations don't happen. And we've been doing a really good job managing our groundwater, which is why we are in better shape than some other areas now.
So it sounds good. I'm still trying to get at the $1 million question. You know, the 20% reduction, if we were able to do that 20% reduction, if we were able to get the water filtration and stuff in place, with that current rainfall water supply, 5 years out, 10 years out, is that sustainable such that at that 20% reduction, we would be sustainable and no problem? Or would we actually still fall short and our reserves are going to be going down, down, down 5 years out, 10 years out? That $1 million question, I don't want to scare people, but you know, that kind of gives us a sense of how active we really need to be today.
Yeah, so definitely it's actually more than $1 million question, no pun intended. But yeah, so what we're looking at is what are different storage projects we can also invest in, because between the more drought-proof supplies, we know that in the future, rain will still occur, but in a different pattern because of climate change. So there might be more of it coming all at once. And so having storage diversified so that we can capture that water is pretty important. So we are investing, or at least tracking several important storage projects. And then one more thing for you to consider, since you do have land use authority, lawns take about 50% of water use in a typical home. Maybe we just can't afford them anymore, but that's for you to decide. But yeah, we are encouraging people to, convert to drought tolerant landscape. We haven't hit any sort of market saturation yet in Santa Clara County. We have a lot of participation, but we could use more. And I think between all of those efforts, we will have a sustainable water supply, and that's our mission.
Great. Next technical question. Again, not sure who it would go to. So I think maybe it was Nita said that Anderson is currently empty and being seismically upgraded. When is that due to be done so that we then have that storage facility back online?
That also an excellent question. It will take 10 years, and I'm by no means the expert on that project, but we have many different regulatory agencies that we need to work with. But the project has in fact started, and so within 10 years that should be complete.
Wow, that's kind of scary. 10 years, I was hoping you were going to say, next year sometime. So the follow-on question. So with that being empty and not usable, are we losing water that otherwise would have been going into that we could have then been drawing on? Are we losing, or is what would have been going into Anderson going into Lexington, someplace else?
Oh, yeah. So Anderson is one of the largest reservoirs we have in our system, and it's a really important it takes both local water, so the runoff that would go in it from, the area that drains to it, and it can also receive imported water. So obviously we're losing the local water. Some of it can be stored in its sister reservoir, Coyote, which is just upstream. But the imported water we're basically storing outside of the county, and we have we have a groundwater bank that we participate in, and other reservoirs outside of the county. But it does make us more vulnerable during this drought not to have Anderson, because we rely more on imported water. Anderson also used to have our emergency storage, so that again, we're having to store outside of the county and then be able to bring it in.
Yeah. So Lexington, as I go over the hill to Santa Cruz, I haven't looked lately, probably for the last year, but it seems like for the last quite a few years, it's never been significantly full. Is Lexington not part of your supply?
No, it is.
It is?
Yeah, so we have 10 reservoirs, but not all of them receive imported water. Many of them were built specifically to capture water during the winter and then release it in the summer for groundwater replenishment. And Lexington is one of those. So Lexington doesn't provide water directly to people. It provides water for groundwater recharge.
Good to know. Thank you. So now the last question, comment, which, I would think might be helpful. When I bought my house back in 1997, it was about 1998 or 1999, there was a toilet exchange program, and it was held at Monte Vista High School, and all you had to do was unbuckle your toilet, like 2-gallon tanker, take it to Monte Vista. They handed you the 1.6 gallon units, a 1-for-1 exchange. And my memory is there was no paperwork, no nothing. You bring that toilet and you walked away with a boxed replacement that was 1.6 gallon. And I bring this up because I think now, are we down to 1.4 gallon toilets, or are we even below that now?
Good question. I would have to look that up.
So the question I would have is, that was so painless and easy. Like I say, I unbuckled, took it there, and walked away with the replacements. I'm thinking that it's 1.4 now because that's what I see at Home Depot. And so going from 1.6 down to 1.4, while it's not as big of change as going from 2 down to 1.6, it's still sizable when you consider the number of flushes going from 1.6 down to 1.4. So if Valley Water, San Jose Water, even with the city's help, like I say, it was at Monte Vista High School in the parking lot, just drive up and walk away. I would think that you would get more participation than the rebates, where people have to, I think, have their toilets inspected, confirm that they're the higher flow, buy the new toilet, send in the receipts to then get reimbursed, because I think that's what it was explained to me. And so far, I haven't gone for the 1.4s. Do I want to go through all that extra work versus if you had it at Monte Vista, I would be there swapping them out. So I just want to leave it with that thought. So thank you everyone for your helpful presentations. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Councilmember Woolley. Let's go next. I did see a hand raised from Robert Seeley. Robert, did you want to make a comment briefly on anything that was covered, or we good on that?
Yeah, I'm relatively good on that. The only thing that I was going to add, and it was just to the first question of forecasting and trying to understand what the future is going to hold for all of us. And I think everybody here, from the retailers to the wholesaler, is going to give the same question or the same answer when it comes to dynamic. We have to be dynamic. We have to be looking for those new sources. We have to be working on infrastructure. And that's how we stay as best we can ahead of a changing weather pattern that we're just not sure what it's going to look like into the future. And to that end, there may be times when we can partner with the council when we're looking to get support for programs that we're trying to get pushed through the CPUC during those rate case cycles. And that would be excellent opportunities for us to move forward. And I would look forward to sharing those with you when the opportunities do arise.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Robert. Let's go to Councilmember Way with the hand raised.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. I want to say hi to Kirsten. I think we just met at the water treatment purifying factory facility in San Jose with Vice Mayor Chow. And as the Cupertino City Council's Valley Water representative, I want to say what our city has done and will be continuing to do is to really collaborate with Valley Water and also Cal Water and San Jose Water for all the rebate programs, irrigation equipment upgrade rebate, groundwater capture rebates, and all the conservation. But I do want to maybe, Kirsten, you can supplement it if you want to do more about future infrastructure investment that the Valley Water is doing. I think we touched on the Anderson Dam seismic retrofit project, but a very important couple other project is the Pacheco Reservoir Expansion Project. That's really going to exist, it's going to upgrade the 6,000 acre feet to 140,000 acre feet. It will, the operation capacity will be 5,500 to 140,000 acre feet. So what I'm trying to say is Valley Water is looking at long-term infrastructure replacement so that investment, so that we could in 10 years actually will be out of this drought scare year after year. But one thing I want to touch is really, I was very impressed when we went to the tour the San Jose purifying water facility. I know Valley Water is investing into another facility. So here people ask, what is recycled water? What's purified water? There's a difference. Recycled water is municipal water waste that has been cleaned and meets state requirements for industrial, agricultural, landscape reuse. So recycled water is distributed into what we call purple pipes. But purified water is a highly treated recycled water that has gone through additional advanced treatment and disinfection to meet state and federal drinking water standards. So I, as a commission with Valley Water, the commissioners ask a lot, how can we increase water supplies? So purified water is one of the ways to do it. And I know Valley Water has investment into it. And in two, it's expand the San Jose facility, but also build a new facility. Can you expand it, Kirsten, where that new facility is going to be?
Yes, so we're working with the city of Palo Alto. We signed an agreement with them in 2019 for their wastewater to build a regional facility that would purify the water and then pipe it all the way to our Los Gatos recharge system in the city of Campbell. As you can imagine, it's a big undertaking to have a 20-mile pipeline go through several cities in a very urbanized area, but this type of project is needed as an investment to make us more drought-proof and have sufficient water supplies in the future.
Yeah, so thank you, Kirsten. So I just want to emphasize, in addition to water conservation, we do believe that investment into water infrastructures in the future is very important. So I think the city of Cupertino is really good at educating our residents and also bring water conservation programs into our residents. We have a Victoria Garden program that helps people convert loans into drought-resistant plants, and it's been very successful. But I think another way we can educate our residents is to invest into the future so that in 10 years, we will not have this drought scare anymore. So that's just my comment. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Councilmember Way. Let's bring this up to dais. Do either Councilmember Moore or Vice Mayor Chow have anything further at this time? And it looks like both Councilmember Moore and Vice Mayor Chow, so Councilmember Moore.
Okay, so part of this agenda item is to provide input to staff on the implemented water conservation restrictions for the city operations. And in the staff report, it mentions that the city's ground division has replaced 33 of 48 irrigation controllers with smart controllers, and the trees and right-of-way division has installed a total of 45 smart controllers capable of performing evapotranspiration adjustments, shutting off on high flow alert and during rain events, which I think is great, but it's also saying the city's reduced an estimated 6% of the water consumption below 2019 values, which is kind of low. So just kind of a side note, I appreciate the mention about watering trees. I think that's really important because to reestablish a tree, it is going to take a whole lot more water. So I want to make sure that people are still watering their trees. I'm concerned about the pollinator situation with so many people turning off their watering their yard, as opposed to converting it to something that could support the pollinators. So your bees, your bats, and certain birds. And I was just looking up some statistics. The pollinator-dependent crops in California are worth $11.7 billion, and the western U.S. population of the monarchs has dropped 99% since the 1980s, and we have a whopping 1,600 native bee species in the state. So I went to look at some of our parks, and I'm going to move over to the overhead. See what we can do here. Okay, so I'm hoping that staff will look into some of these areas in our parks that are not strictly used for sports fields. So this is Creekside Park, if you're not familiar with it. So you've got Creekside 1 and 2, which are the soccer fields. This is Creekside 3, but there are some areas that could potentially, instead of just simply turning off the water on these areas and having it browned out, if this could be, some of these spaces could be replanted with California natives, and if we could do something to encourage large green lawn areas that are in the privately owned, if we can help encourage that conversion to native planting, as opposed to having the restriction where it's just going to turn this brown. And again, looking around the Quinlan Center, there's places where you can switch over to some native planting around the perimeters rather than just turning off the tap. And again, looking at Wilson Park as well, there seems to be some areas that we can be having some reduction in conversion. So we're still supporting the pollinators in the landscape. Perhaps some large trees that support them could be implemented. And then I'd also like to see, and I don't have any photographs of it, going down Stevens Creek Boulevard, for instance, we have a lot of turf in the Parkway Strip, and I'd like to see the commercial areas, the commercial property owners have encouragement, and maybe it needs to be done through the municipal code, that in the future we don't have large turfed areas, that we're doing something there to reduce that and reduce the amount of turf and help with the pollinators there as well. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Councilmember Moore. Next, we have Vice Mayor Chow.
Thank you. That's similar to one of I was going to comment on that too. I think, yeah, so the city has turned off water for non-active use lawns. So they have become brown. And I talked to a Palo Alto council member, and then they have this program that neighborhood can adopt a brown area in their neighborhood and then help plant that native plant garden, maybe with pollinating plants. And actually one person have approached me at the farmer's market that how come suggesting that maybe the city can plan this as demonstration of what drought-tolerant, eco-friendly garden look like, and then that might encourage more people to convert. I do have a question for the many people from the different agencies. Thank you for coming. And so there are rebates for residents to convert to drought-tolerant. How about cities? Do you have programs to provide grant for the cities to we have turned off the water, but if we can convert that to drought-tolerant garden, do we get grants for those?
I can start. We do have programs for what we would call institutions to assist with, converting landscapes. And the state actually just banned watering of all non-functional turf in commercial, industrial, and institutional properties. So we now have a new program as part of our landscape rebate program to convert those, to help people convert those areas to mulch and trees. Our current landscape rebate program has requirements for certain amount of plant cover, but knowing that, maybe it would be better to just get rid of the lawn but save the trees. We have this new program that we just launched just in time for the state's ban that we're encouraging people to look into and apply for.
Thank you. Someone else asked me, why don't we use recycled water for Blackberry golf course? And my understanding is the pipes do not reach Cupertino. And then they asked, how come the city doesn't contribute to this kind of investment? So could you help educate me and maybe the public? This kind of water infrastructure, are they funded by all of they are funded by all of us, right? Even it's located in Sunnyvale or Palo Alto. For example, the purified plant is in Palo Alto. I think there are a list of cities they are planning to supply from Palo Alto, Mountain View, Sunnyvale, San Jose, and Campbell, but not Cupertino. I learned that in my tour at the purified plant. But then I'm told that even though that pipe particularly didn't reach Cupertino, because it's providing water to those cities, that helps the entire region to reduce our water need. So whether it reaches Cupertino or not specifically, still as a region, any of this project helps. Could you confirm that understanding?
Yes, that is correct, Council Member. So the Purified Water Project, being a water supply, drinking water supply project, is funded by Valley Water and then through our ratepayers. And the pipe, even though it doesn't go through Cupertino, it only supplies the groundwater recharge ponds, and everyone that uses groundwater will benefit from that water. And then for the other type of recycled water, the purple pipe that was mentioned earlier, those systems are typically put in by the wastewater agencies. We do support our wastewater agency partners in extending pipes, but that's at that point it is the wastewater supply and the wastewater agencies distribution typically.
And those agencies are funded by all of us too, right? Even though it doesn't reach us specifically.
So the wastewater agencies are funded through wastewater rates in the communities that they serve.
Then does anyone know what it would take to bring recycled water to like our Blackberry farm or other part in Cupertino?
I guess I can speak to that in a general sense. So Purple Pipe is the big question on Purple Pipe has always been infrastructure and cost effectiveness. And when we look at bringing water to customers, whether they be businesses, cities, residents, what it has to do is it has to make sense for those options to be affordable, and that the rates can't go up so dramatically that it makes that untenable for most people to handle. And in the past, that and other options that have existed have been largely in that category. Now, as we go into sourcing more water, as the technology advances and it gets more available, that is being considered more and more often, and we work to project those into plans moving into the future. And so I think the answer is yes, that we're all working towards multiple different systems that allow for better water conservation and usage, whether it be recharge or purple pipe, or some areas in California are now using desal, while others are considering it, and all of those are on the table. And it's just a question of making that make sense in terms of rates for the ratepayers in a way that works for everyone involved. So we are moving towards that. I think as a state, Cal Water is certainly doing its research and projecting that into future water availability plans.
Thank you. So I think another concept many people are confused is Valley Water is the wholesale agency. You sell water to the water retails. And today we have Cal Water and San Jose Water. They are the retailers. So they serve two different regions of Cupertino residents directly. And then any of the program you mentioned today under Valley Water, everyone, it applies to all Cupertino residents, they can apply. But programs for Cal Water, I'm guessing only applies to those who are served by Cal Water, and programs by San Jose Water only applies to those served by San Jose Water, right?
That is correct. And the reason for that being is for those people that pay rates to Cal Water for their retail service, those programs are then generated through some of that in order to help those communities. The same thing would be true for the other retailers, while Valley Water covers all of us and so has a larger service area in terms of who they supply to and their territory by which they operate.
Great. Another question people commonly ask is, how about swimming pool? You didn't mention any converging for of swimming pool. Does swimming pool use more water than lawn? Or it's all water evaporation rate is similar? So
I can start. So our landscape rebate program targets all high water using landscapes, and that does include pools. So if someone wanted to convert their pool to drought tolerant landscaping, they could apply for our landscape rebate program. Pools, filling them obviously takes a lot of water, and then if water evaporates constantly, that takes a lot of water as well. So we do encourage people to have pool covers. But at this point, we don't have a program for that. We just have the landscape rebate program if someone wants to convert their pool to a different type of.
When I looked at Palo Alto, they are forbidding fountains that they allow fountains that recycle their water, but fountains that do not recycle, they are forbidding that. Is that a Valley Water requirement, or is just their city requirement? I'm not very sure.
That would be their city requirement. Valley Water actually doesn't serve Palo Alto. They have a different wholesaler. But every retailer has a water shortage contingency plan, and they activate different stages, and whether fountains or pool filling, those things are on there. And so I defer to the retailers in terms of rules for that.
Okay. Thank you. I think another question many people wonder is, we get this a lot. We are in a drought. Year after year and after year, we are asked to save water 20 to 30%. Yet we are planning for housing element that likely will add 4,500 to 6,000 units. That in Cupertino is about 20% of households, and we are required to build them in 8 years or we get punished by the state. So is our water source sustainable with the expected population growth in the area? Yeah.
I guess I'll start. We actually use much less water now than we did years ago when we had less population, because we have made advances in technology. As was mentioned earlier, the toilet flush, I actually looked it up, is 1.28 gallons per flush now. So if you want to get rid of your 1.6, but so things like that have actually reduced the amount of water our community uses. And our water supply master plan that I mentioned earlier does work with all the cities and the retailers to look ahead to make sure that we have enough water for our communities, that we understand everyone's growth, what is in their general plans, what the retailers are projecting. And so we're working towards those goals. And then we're also looking at climate change and other changes that might come up that could impact our water supply. So we are planning for that future to make sure we have a sustainable water supply. And all the infrastructure investments that we talked about will help us do that.
Thank you. One other question a couple people asked is they live in apartments.
Vice Mayor, if you could wrap it up,
Okay.
we're going to go ahead.
Last question. So they live in apartments. A lot of these measures are for homeowners who have backyards. And so that they're asking what can they do. So my understanding from today is they can install a water efficient washer and a water efficient toilet. What else can they do?
They can look for leaks. Go ahead, Nita.
Oh yes, we also have programs for multifamily homes. For example, we do have a sub-metering program where apartment complexes can replace their water meters with individual sub-meters for units, and that will help people track their water use for each unit and also be able to identify leaks and waste. So that is another program that's available.
Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, from all of our water entities. Again, Valley Water, the Cal Water Services Company, as well as San Jose Water. We really appreciate you coming out here, and as you can tell, our community is really interested in the various details and ways that water affects our various activities. And we take this very seriously, and so thanks for taking your time this evening to work with us on this. Looking forward to all of our great collaborations in the future as well. So we'll bid you a good night, and we'll go on to our next item on the agenda. I will do a quick time check. It's 9:31 right now, so why don't we take a 5-minute break, come back at 9:37, and we have a couple of items that are related to our Environmental Review Committee as well as Economic Development Committee. Prior to the last one, item 16, which shouldn't take too long. So let's go ahead and again reconvene at 9:37, and we'll start back up with item number 14. Thanks very much.